Emily Lawson lived in a quiet town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever seemed to change. To her neighbors, she was just an ordinary woman, polite, unassuming, and always ready with a smile. But Emily carried a secret, one she had kept hidden for 8 years. It was a secret that could change everything if it ever came to light. For almost a decade, she had lived a double life, balancing the calm of everyday normalcy with the intensity of a fighter pilot's world. Her mornings began like anyone else's, with a cup of coffee and the soft hum of the radio. But Emily's thoughts were miles away, in places few people ever saw, soaring above the clouds, strapped into the cockpit of a fighter jet, maneuvering through deadly skies. She had trained for this life in silence. She had endured long nights, endless drills, and moments where failure meant losing everything. And yet, she had never told a soul. The reason was simple. The world wasn't ready for Emily's truth. She worked as an aerospace engineer by day, her identity carefully guarded. To her colleagues and friends, the military was just a distant institution, something others handled. But in reality, Emily was one of the nation's best fighter pilots, handpicked for her skill, precision, and calm under pressure. Her role was classified, a ghost in the skies. No one knew the hours she spent in a simulator, flying missions that felt more real than anything else. No one knew about the friendships she had formed in secret, the bonds forged in the pressure cooker of military life. And no one understood the burden she carried every time she walked away from the cockpit, leaving behind a world where lives depended on every decision she made. For Emily, secrecy was survival. If the wrong people found out, not only would her career be over, but her family could be at risk. She thought often about her aging parents, living hundreds of miles away, blissfully unaware of the danger that shadowed their daughter's every move. Protecting them meant staying silent, even when the weight of her secret felt almost too much to bear. But on this day, everything was different. There was a storm brewing far beyond her quiet town, a storm that no one could ignore. News reports whispered of escalating tensions in a distant part of the world. Enemy aircraft were moving closer to the border. The government was mobilizing its forces, calling on every available pilot to prepare for what could become a devastating conflict. Emily felt the familiar tightening in her chest, a mixture of fear, duty, and determination. She had trained for moments like this, but after 8 years in hiding, she wondered if she was still ready. The phone call came late at night. A coded message, an order she could not refuse. Her secret was about to become a public truth, and she had no choice but to step into the spotlight she had avoided for so long. As she packed her gear, Emily's mind raced through memories, the early mornings in the freezing cold, the sound of engines roaring overhead, the countless times she had faced danger without hesitation. Yet now, the risk was no longer just her own. The fate of millions depended on her courage and skill. Driving to the military base under the cover of darkness, Emily kept her eyes on the road, but her thoughts far ahead. What would her team think when they saw her? Could she trust them after all these years? More importantly, could she trust herself? The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like never before. When she arrived, the base was alive with urgency. Pilots rushed to their jets. Commanders barked orders. In the middle of it all stood Emily, once invisible, now the last hope in the sky. For the first time in 8 years, she would reveal the truth, not just to the world, but to herself. The secret she had carried in silence was about to become the mission of her lifetime. Emily sat alone in the briefing room, the weight of what was coming pressing down on her like a heavy fog. For 8 years, she had lived in the shadows, hiding her true identity. Now, the world around her was shifting faster than she could follow. The government had called on her, a secret pilot, to step out of the darkness and into a battle that threatened everything she cared about. She thought back to the grueling training she had endured in silence. The early mornings, the endless simulations, the relentless push to perfect every maneuver. The other pilots didn't know about her. Even her closest friends had no idea what she did when she slipped away from ordinary life. Emily was different. She was both fighter and ghost, blending in perfectly while mastering a craft that few could understand. Every moment in the cockpit had been a test of nerves and skill. Flying a fighter jet was not just about speed or firepower. It was about control, precision, and split-second decisions that could mean life or death. The roar of the engine, the cold rush of air, and the endless blue sky were her world. But that world had been kept secret, hidden beneath layers of normalcy. The military had asked her to keep quiet for a reason. Emily knew that. The risks were too high. If her identity was revealed prematurely, it could compromise missions, endanger lives, and shatter the fragile balance of trust that kept her safe. For years, she accepted that solitude was the price she paid for her duty. Now, everything was changing. Reports of enemy fighter jets crossing borders, disrupting peace, and threatening innocent lives filled the news. The quiet moments of her life had vanished, replaced by the urgent call to arms. Emily was no longer just a secret. She was a lifeline. As she reviewed the mission details, her hands steady but her heart racing, she felt the weight of responsibility settle in. This wasn't a drill or a test. This was real. The enemy was out there, and the country was counting on her. It was a role she had prepared for but never expected to face alone. Her team gathered in the room, their faces unfamiliar, their eyes sharp with anticipation. Emily had never revealed herself to them before. She wasn't just a pilot. She was a symbol of hope they had never seen. Trust was fragile, built on silence and necessity. Now, she had to bridge the gap between secrecy and teamwork. Captain Lawson, the commanding officer, said, his voice steady but carrying the urgency of the situation. "We need you in the air as soon as possible. The enemy is advancing, and our defenses are stretched thin. You're our last hope." Emily nodded, swallowing the knot of nerves in her throat. She could do this. She had to. Years of hidden training, years of quiet sacrifice, had prepared her for this moment. The secret life she had led was about to become the only thing standing between destruction and survival. She suited up quickly, each piece of gear a reminder of the life she had hidden for so long. The helmet, the flight suit, the gloves, they were not just equipment. They were a shield, a symbol of the courage and commitment she carried inside. As she walked to her jet, the hum of the engines welcomed her back to the sky. Climbing into the cockpit, Emily felt a familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with calm focus. The controls were an extension of her body, the instruments a language she spoke fluently. She was ready, ready to face the enemy, ready to protect her country, ready to step out of the shadows. The runway stretched ahead, a ribbon of hope in the darkness. The world below waited, unaware of the woman behind the visor, the fighter pilot who had kept her life secret for so long. Tonight, Emily would fly not just for herself, but for every person counting on her courage. The sky was hers, and the mission was clear: defend, survive, and never give up. As the jet roared down the runway and lifted into the night, Emily glanced once more at the fading lights of her quiet town. It was the last time she would leave that part of her life behind. The secret was over. Now, the fight had begun. The night sky was dark and endless as Emily soared higher, her jet cutting through the cold air with precision. Below her, the world seemed peaceful, too peaceful. But Emily knew better. Far beyond the horizon, trouble was brewing. Reports had been growing more urgent with every hour. Enemy aircraft were not just near the border. They were advancing fast, crossing into airspace that had been considered safe for decades. The tension inside the command center was palpable. Screens lit up with radar blips that spoke of impending conflict. For years, Emily had watched from the sidelines as tension simmered, but tonight, those simmering threats were boiling over. The news channels buzzed with speculation, but few understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. Emily's squadron scrambled into formation behind her, engines roaring, ready for the challenge. She felt a surge of responsibility unlike anything she'd ever known. These pilots looked to her not just for leadership, but for hope. And Emily had kept a secret for so long. Her true identity, her skills, her experience. Now, all of it was on the line. The enemy jets appeared as tiny specks on the radar, growing larger with every passing second. Emily's voice came over the radio, steady and commanding. All units, stay sharp. We're the last line of defense. We cannot let them through. The sky erupted in chaos. Enemy fighters darted through the clouds like shadows, fast and unforgiving. Emily's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting speed and angle, tracking each movement with deadly accuracy. Every second counted. One wrong move could cost lives, both hers and those she was sworn to protect. Memories flashed through Emily's mind, the long hours of training, the sacrifices she'd made, the loneliness of keeping her true self hidden. But now, those memories were fuel. She was not just flying for herself anymore. She was flying for a nation on the brink. The first missiles fired. Emily twisted her jet, narrowly dodging the deadly streaks of light. Her heart pounded, but her mind was calm, focused. She signaled her squadron, coordinating their movements in a complex dance of survival and attack. The sky was a battlefield, filled with noise and fury, but Emily was in control. Despite the chaos, Emily noticed something chilling. The enemy was relentless. Their numbers were greater than expected, their tactics ruthless. It became clear quickly that this was no ordinary skirmish. It was a full-scale assault meant to overwhelm and break the defenses. The radio crackled with urgent messages, pilots calling for backup, reporting damage, struggling to stay in the fight. Emily's own jet took a hit, shuddering under the impact. She gritted her teeth, fighting the instinct to panic. There was no time for fear. "Keep moving," she ordered, her voice steady. "We hold the line, no matter what." As the battle raged on, Emily found herself pushed to the edge. Fuel was running low, missiles were expended, and exhaustion crept in. But the thought of giving up never crossed her mind. She remembered the people she was defending, the families sleeping peacefully below, unaware of the deadly dance above them. Minutes felt like hours. The enemy kept pressing, and Emily's squadron thinned as jets were forced to retreat or were lost in the sky. Yet, through every challenge, Emily held firm. She was the last hope, and she would not let them down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the tide began to turn. Emily's skill and leadership had broken the enemy's momentum. The attackers faltered, some retreating back over the border. The sky grew quieter, the battle fading into a tense calm. Emily took a deep breath, her body aching but her spirit unbroken. She glanced down at the land below, her home, her country. The fight was far from over, but for now, the skies were safe. As she guided her jet back to base, Emily knew one thing clearly. Her secret life had ended the moment she took to the skies. Now, she was no longer just a shadow in the background. She was the last hope in the sky, and the nation would never forget her courage. The battle was only the beginning. The night was thick with tension as Emily landed her jet, the roar of the engines fading into an eerie silence. The adrenaline that had fueled her moments ago now gave way to a heavy exhaustion. She climbed out of the cockpit, her body aching but her mind sharper than ever. The fight in the sky was over, but a new battle was about to begin, a battle of trust. In the briefing room, she faced a group of officers and pilots who had never seen her fly before. For years, they knew of a skilled but mysterious pilot, one whose existence was more rumor than fact. Now, standing before them, Emily was no longer a shadow. Her secret was out, and the weight of that truth pressed on her shoulders. The commanding officer spoke first, his voice steady but laced with surprise. "Captain Lawson, Your performance today was remarkable. But why did you keep your identity hidden for so long? Emily took a deep breath. It was necessary. My work was classified. The risks to my family and team were too great if I revealed myself prematurely. But when the threat became real, hiding was no longer an option. The room was quiet, absorbing her words. There was respect, but also a hint of skepticism. Trust isn't given lightly in times of war, especially when the stakes are so high. As the officers asked questions, Emily felt the old nerves creeping in. Years of silence had built walls between her and this team. She needed to break them down quickly, because the enemy was still out there, and they couldn't afford hesitation. Later, alone in the locker room, Emily allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She thought about her parents, miles away, unaware of the storm she had just faced. She thought about the friends she had kept at a distance, all because of this secret. The loneliness of her double life felt heavier now. But the mission was bigger than her fears. The threat was not over. Enemy forces were regrouping, and intelligence suggested a new wave of attacks was imminent. Emily's role had changed. She was no longer just a pilot in the shadows. She was a leader, a symbol of hope. Over the next few days, Emily worked tirelessly to integrate with her squadron. She shared her knowledge, trained harder than ever, and proved that her years of secrecy had not dulled her edge. Slowly, the team began to trust her, not just as a pilot, but as one of their own. One afternoon, as they gathered for a strategy session, Emily's commanding officer handed her a new assignment. We need you to lead a critical reconnaissance mission. The enemy is hiding something, and we need eyes in the sky. The weight of the task settled on Emily, but so did a quiet determination. This was what she had prepared for, even in silence. The mission wasn't just about gathering information. It was about turning the tide. As Emily prepared for the flight, she thought about how far she had come, from a woman living a secret life to the last hope for her country's skies. Every moment of sacrifice, every hidden hour, had led to this. Climbing into her jet once again, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The past 8 years of secrecy were behind her. Now, she would face the future head-on, with courage and clarity. The engines hummed to life, and as Emily soared into the sky, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, she was ready. The fight was far from over, but Emily Lawson was no longer alone. She was a fighter, a leader, and the last hope in the sky. And this was only the beginning. The morning air was sharp and cool as Emily prepared for the reconnaissance mission. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the airbase. Every moment felt charged with urgency, as if the world held its breath, waiting for what was to come. Emily reviewed the mission brief one last time. Intelligence reports hinted at secret enemy movements deep inside hostile territory, movements that could shift the balance of power in the conflict. The stakes were higher than ever. The mission was simple in theory. Fly in, gather as much information as possible, and get out. But the reality was anything but. Every second in enemy airspace was a gamble with death. Her squadron prepared alongside her, their faces a mix of determination and concern. Emily knew their lives depended on her leadership, and that thought settled heavily on her chest. She couldn't afford to falter. Climbing into her jet, Emily felt the familiar hum of engines beneath her. The cockpit was cold and clinical, but for her it was home. She strapped in, the weight of the helmet pressing down on her, sealing her away from the world. Once more, she was alone with the sky. As she took off, the base fell away beneath her, replaced by the endless blue above. The enemy's territory lay ahead, a dangerous unknown that had to be navigated with the utmost caution. Emily's eyes scanned the instruments, her mind alert to every detail. The flight was tense and silent, broken only by the quiet chatter over the radio. Emily's squadron followed her lead, keeping formation as they approached the target zone. Radar showed signs of heavy activity. Vehicles moving, bases being fortified, signals intercepted. It was worse than expected. Suddenly, the silence shattered. Enemy fighters appeared, fast and aggressive. Emily's voice cut through the radio. Evasive maneuvers now. Protect the reconnaissance units. Missiles streaked through the sky. Emily twisted her jet sharply, narrowly avoiding destruction. Her heart pounded, but she pushed fear aside. Every move was calculated, every decision critical. The battle that followed was brutal and unforgiving. Enemy pilots were skilled, desperate to stop the reconnaissance. Emily's squadron fought with everything they had. The roar of engines, the flash of missiles, and the crackle of radio chatter filled the sky. Despite the chaos, Emily's focus never wavered. She guided her team through the enemy fire, ensuring the reconnaissance drones reached their targets and sent back vital information. Time was slipping away, but so was the enemy's advantage. One by one, the enemy fighters began to retreat, unable to break through Emily's defense. The squadron regrouped, battered but victorious. The reconnaissance mission was a success. The intelligence gathered would prove crucial in the days ahead. Back at base, Emily removed her helmet, sweat and exhaustion mixing on her brow. The reality of the fight weighed on her, but so did a fierce pride. She had led her team through the impossible, and they had prevailed. As the debrief began, Emily listened to the reports, absorbing every detail. The enemy's plans were clearer now: strategic locations, supply routes, and hidden bases. With this knowledge, the military could plan their next move, turning the tide of the conflict. But Emily knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The enemy would not give up easily, and the skies would remain dangerous for a long time to come. Later that night, alone in her quarters, Emily allowed herself a moment to reflect. She thought about the secret she had kept for so long and the journey that had brought her here. The life of silence was over, replaced by a life of duty and courage. Her phone buzzed. A message from her parents, full of love and concern, reminding her of the family waiting for her return. Emily smiled, a reminder of what she fought for, not just a country, but the people who believed in her, even when she couldn't tell them the truth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, and new dangers. But for now, Emily Lawson was ready. She was more than a secret pilot. She was a leader, a warrior, and the last hope in the sky. And she would keep fighting, no matter the cost. The days following the reconnaissance mission blurred together in a relentless rhythm of preparation and briefings. The intelligence Emily squadron had gathered painted a clear, frightening picture. The enemy was amassing forces, planning something big, something that could turn this fragile conflict into a full-scale war. The pressure mounted, and Emily felt it in every fiber of her being. Yet, beneath the weight of looming threats, something else was stirring, a fragile sense of hope. For the first time in years, Emily was no longer alone in her fight. Her squadron had come to respect her not just for her skills, but for her courage and leadership. They saw her as more than a secret pilot. She was their captain, their guide through the darkest skies. Emily spent every waking moment preparing. The base buzzed with activity, planes being serviced, weapons checked, new pilots arriving. She studied every detail of the upcoming mission, knowing that their next flight could decide the fate of countless lives. One evening, as she stood by the hangar watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of orange and pink, a fellow pilot approached. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. "Before you came, we didn't know what we were missing." Emily smiled, the compliment warming her despite the chill in the air. "We all have a role to play," she replied. "I'm just glad to be part of this team." But the calm was deceptive. Intelligence reports kept coming, each one more alarming than the last. The enemy was moving rapidly, launching attacks in small but coordinated waves. The skies grew more dangerous, and the stakes climbed higher. Then came the orders. a strike mission targeting a key enemy installation deep within hostile territory. The mission was critical. If successful, it would cripple the enemy's ability to launch future attacks. If it failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Emily's heart clenched as she prepared. This was no reconnaissance flight. This was war. In the briefing room, she stood before her squadron, the weight of responsibility clear in her eyes. "This mission is dangerous," she said, her voice steady. "But it's necessary. We strike hard and fast. We protect each other, and we come home together." The pilots nodded, a mix of resolve and apprehension on their faces. Emily could feel their fear. It was hers, too, but she knew they trusted her. As they suited up, the base was alive with activity. The engines roared to life, filling the air with vibration and power. Emily climbed into her jet, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with steely determination. The flight toward the target was tense. Enemy radar was more active than expected, and the skies crackled with warnings. Emily's squadron moved as one, weaving through defenses, dodging missile fire. As they approached the installation, the real battle began. Enemy fighters swarmed, launching a relentless assault. Emily led her team with precision, coordinating attacks and defenses in a deadly aerial dance. Missiles streaked past, explosions lit up the sky, and the roar of engines filled her ears. Every second was a test of skill and nerve. Despite the chaos, Emily kept her focus. She targeted the installation, releasing her payload with pinpoint accuracy. The strike was devastating. Key structures were destroyed, crippling the enemy's operations. But the victory came at a cost. One of her squadron members was hit, forced to eject. Emily watched in grim silence as the pilot parachuted into enemy territory. The squadron regrouped and retreated, their mission successful, but their hearts heavy. Back at base, the news spread quickly. The strike had dealt a severe blow to the enemy's capabilities, buying precious time for their defenses. Emily sat alone, thinking of the pilot lost behind enemy lines and the battles still ahead. The war was far from over. But Emily Lawson had proven something undeniable. She was no longer a secret. She was a leader, a fighter, the last hope in the sky. And she would keep fighting for her team, for her country, and for the future they all dreamed of. The weight of the missing pilot pressed heavily on Emily's mind as she prepared for the next mission. The silence left in their squadron was deafening. He was not just a teammate, he was a friend, someone who had trusted her leadership with his life. Now, stranded behind enemy lines, his fate was uncertain, and Emily knew the mission ahead would test them all like never before. The intelligence team worked tirelessly to gather any information about their missing pilot's location. Every intercepted message, every scrap of data was analyzed, but the enemy was careful, too careful. It was as if they wanted to keep him hidden, a prize or perhaps a bargaining chip. Emily sat in the command center, eyes locked on the screens showing the drone footage and satellite images. The urgency in the room was palpable. Command had authorized a rescue operation, but it was dangerous, maybe even suicidal. Emily volunteered immediately, knowing that no one else was as prepared, as determined to bring him home. Her squadron was hesitant. They wanted to support her, but the risks were glaringly obvious. "Captain," one of her pilots said quietly, "this mission isn't just dangerous, it's nearly impossible." Emily looked at him steadily. "Then we make the impossible possible. We owe him that much." The plan was to infiltrate enemy territory under the cover of night, land close to the pilot's last known location, and extract him before the enemy could react. Time was running out. Every minute he spent behind enemy lines could mean the difference between life and death. As they prepared, Emily's mind raced through every detail: flight paths, enemy patrols, escape routes. The mission demanded flawless execution. When the jets took off, the base was cloaked in darkness. The quiet hum of the engines masked the storm brewing in Emily's heart. She led her squadron into the night, every sense heightened, every decision critical. Approaching the extraction zone, the enemy's air defenses stirred. Alarms blared, and the sky erupted in a sudden barrage of missiles. Emily's jet shuddered under the assault, but she pressed forward, weaving through explosions with practiced skill. Her squadron fought fiercely, shielding the rescue team as they descended to the landing zone. On the ground, a small team moved swiftly, guided by Emily's precise instructions over the radio. Minutes stretched like hours as they searched the rugged terrain. Finally, a faint signal, a beacon from the missing pilot's emergency transmitter. Emily's heart surged. "We found him," she whispered into the radio. The rescue team closed in, dodging enemy patrols. Then, through the shadows, the pilot emerged, exhausted, wounded, but alive. The team moved quickly, loading him onto the extraction vehicle. Emily's voice crackled over the radio, coordinating their escape as enemy forces closed in. With the pilot safe, the squadron took to the skies, racing back toward home. The return flight was tense but triumphant. Every eye was fixed on the horizon, every pilot aware that they had just rewritten the odds. Back at base, the pilot was rushed to medical care. Emily stayed by his side, her relief tempered by the knowledge of battles yet to come. News of the daring rescue spread quickly, boosting morale across the forces. Emily's leadership was praised, but she deflected the attention. For her, it was never about glory. It was about loyalty, courage, and the promise to never leave a comrade behind. As she stood outside later that night, the stars twinkling above, Emily felt a quiet strength growing inside her. The war was far from over, and the enemy was ruthless. But so was she. Her secret life was behind her now. She was no longer just a fighter pilot hidden in the shadows. She was a leader, a protector, the last hope in the sky. And as long as there was breath in her lungs and fire in her heart, she would keep fighting for her team, for her country, and for the future they all dreamed of. The battle for the skies was just beginning. The dawn broke quietly over the airbase, but inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Emily stood at the edge of the runway, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The war had changed everything. Her secret was out, her life forever altered. But now, the future lay in her hands. She was no longer just a fighter pilot. She was a symbol, a leader, the last hope in the sky. The rescue mission had lifted morale, but intelligence warned of a final, decisive strike from the enemy. A massive aerial assault designed to break their defenses once and for all. Emily knew this would be the most dangerous battle yet, a battle not just for control of the skies, but for the survival of her country. Her squadron gathered around her, faces marked by exhaustion, but burning with determination. "This is it," Emily said, her voice steady. "The moment we've trained for, the moment we can't afford to lose. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone counting on us." Engines roared to life, and the jets lined up on the runway, ready to launch into the storm. Emily's heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She thought of the people waiting below, families, friends, her own parents who still didn't fully understand the life she had hidden away for so long. As the jets soared into the sky, the battlefield opened before them, a swirling chaos of enemy fighters, missile fire, and the unforgiving vastness of open air. The enemy was relentless, their tactics brutal, but Emily's squadron moved as one. They were a finely tuned machine, driven by trust and led by her unwavering hand. Missiles streaked past, and explosions lit up the clouds. Emily danced through the chaos, her instincts razor sharp. She called out commands, coordinated strikes, and shielded her squadron with fierce resolve. Every second counted. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. The enemy pushed harder, but Emily's team held the line. Her jet took hits, shaking violently, but she refused to yield. She thought of the years spent in secrecy, the sacrifices made to keep her skills sharp and her identity hidden. All of it had led to this. As the battle reached its peak, Emily spotted the enemy's command ship, a massive, heavily armed fortress in the sky. Disabling, it could turn the tide. With a deep breath, she broke formation and charged forward, drawing fire away from her squadron. The sky erupted in a deadly ballet of fire and steel. Emily dodged missiles, her jet skimming the edge of destruction. She locked onto the command ship and fired, the payload striking true. Explosions rocked the enemy formation, chaos spreading among their ranks. Her squadron seized the moment, pushing back with renewed strength. One by one, enemy fighters fell, their advance shattered. The battle waned, the skies clearing as the enemy retreated. Emily's jet, battered and smoking, limped home with her squadron close behind. As they landed, cheers erupted, but Emily remained focused, her thoughts already on the challenges ahead. In the quiet aftermath, she stood on the runway, looking up at the sky she had fought so hard to protect. The war was far from over, but today had been a victory, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and unwavering hope. Emily knew her life had changed forever. The secret she'd kept for 8 years was no longer a burden, but a beacon. She was no longer just a hidden fighter pilot. She was a leader, a hero, the last hope in the sky. And as the sun rose higher, bathing the world in light, Emily Lawson prepared for whatever came next, ready to fight, ready to lead, and ready to protect the skies for generations to come.